From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
The fruit varieties of tomorrow.
There's a lot of different traits and characteristics we care about as we're trying to develop a new variety of a grape or a cherry.
Start in the lab of today. We'll take you on a tour. Cash receipts for crops getting hit hard this year, but one crop is really taking it on the chin. And trade under a second Trump administration.
He looks at the tariffs as a way to get their attention and eventually to get better trade agreements, fair and reciprocal agreements.
I talk one-on-one with the person who had a front row seat to the first round of trade negotiations with China under President Trump. Right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Agriculture should expect an aggressive trade agenda to return under a second Trump administration. That was the message from President-elect Trump's ambassador to China, Terry Branstad, at this week's Agricultural Retailer Association's annual meeting in Houston, Texas. The former governor of Iowa speaking plainly about what to expect from the next Trump administration.
I know people are concerned about the tariffs, but the fact is he looks at the tariffs as a way to get their attention and eventually to get better trade agreements, fair and reciprocal agreements.
As ambassador to China during the first Trump administration, he had a front row seat to the trade negotiations that ultimately yielded a Phase 1 agreement.
I believe that Trump will try to do as he did before, get their attention through the tariffs, and he's doing the same thing with Canada and Mexico, but then try to work out a trade agreement and that's fair and reciprocal. And the key there is it's got to be a win-win situation.
Branstad says he expects the administration to continue its focus on trade with China, including taking steps beyond that Phase 1 deal. You think they'll work toward a Phase 2 or continue?
I think so. That was the intent when we agreed to the Phase 1 agreement, and the problem was there wasn't the support in China to go the extra mile and do the other Phase 2. But I know that the Trump team wanted to do that, and had he been reelected at that time, I think they would have pursued it.
Now, according to USDA, in 2023, China was the largest market for U.S. ag exports, accounting for 17% of the total. They're also a significant supplier of inputs such as fertilizer and crop protection products. Leaders with ARA admit trade is high on their list of things to watch in the new administration.
I understand that the president's trying to level the playing field and punish some people that have been taking advantage of the global trade rules. But we've got to make sure everybody understands the consequences of using that particular tool and what the ramifications will be when it comes back around.
Regardless of the concern, Kopic knows the industry shouldn't expect the status quo.
Biden did nothing for 4 years. And so I think that we're going to see a much more aggressive approach taken. Some people are fearful of that. I actually think it's a good thing. I think it will lead to a more fairness and reciprocity in terms of trade.
The ag retail industry is already looking forward to the next growing season. Monday, we'll take a look at some of the innovations farmers can expect in the coming years.
AgDay's coverage of the Agricultural Retailers Association Conference and Expo is brought to you by Verdesian. At Verdesian Life Sciences, we're unlocking the full potential of every nutrient for smarter, more efficient farming. Maximize your profitability with Verdesian. Learn more at vlsci.com.
And President-elect Trump has named another key figure to his trade team, selecting former aide Peter Navarro to serve as senior counselor for trade and manufacturing. Mr. Trump saying Navarro will be responsible for helping, quote, successfully advance and communicate the Trump manufacturing, tariff, and trade agendas, end quote. Now, Navarro served 4 months in prison after being held in contempt of Congress for defying a subpoena from the House committee related to the January 6th riot on the U.S. Capitol. USDA releasing its latest farm income forecast for 2024. And as we told you yesterday, net farm income is expected to come in at $140.7 billion. And the forecast shows cash receipts are down from last year for almost every crop, with receipts for wheat projected to be 9% lower, for soybeans down by almost 14.5%, and corn by 22.5%. But the crop taking the biggest hit is cotton, which has plunged by almost 30%. Now, USDA starting the year with projections of about 80 cents a pound.
And now we're down to 66 cents a pound, if I recall correctly, in the last WASDE. That's a heck of a decline. 80 cents was okay. It wasn't going to be a big moneymaker, but 66 cents is certainly not.
Despite the drop in net farm income, USDA is projecting farm sector equity to rise by 5.2% this year due to growth in real estate values. Drought conditions appear to have worsened last week. The latest drought monitor showing that areas of the country in moderate to exceptional drought increased by 2% last week, with just over 43% of the nation now in drought. Forecasters say conditions worsened, especially in the east, where Virginia and North Carolina are now almost entirely impacted by drought. And you can see the dry conditions travel up through the northeast. However, Ohio and West Virginia saw some improvement, but compared to last year, things are looking better for the winter wheat crop, with 29% of the production areas dealing with drought. Last year, at this time, it was about 38% of the crop was in drought, with Kansas especially hard hit. This year, 56% of the crop is rated good to excellent right now. More moisture appears to be on the way in the form of snow. Meteorologist Jack Van Meter has an update for us.
As we see these colder temperatures start to move south in the United States, we are starting to see some of that rain really start to switch over to those more snowy conditions. As we start our radar earlier this morning, again, we can see some snow stretching all the way from just north of Minneapolis coming down to parts of the Great Lakes states. And obviously, it's a big system that moved through last week is still off the East Coast. But I want to just say, look at all the high pressure that's really going to be dominating in the Great Plains. A lot of folks really going to be seeing a lot of clear conditions. We are seeing some more Gulf moisture starting to creep on, and also our next low pressure center off of the Pacific Northwest. And yet again, another clipper system starting to move through and really just, again, clipping the Great Lakes states and moving to the East Coast, where actually they're expected to see a good amount of snow to start off the week. And harvest is still wrapping up in Canada. 7th generation farmer Greg showing us his last rows of corn, meeting with the combine in Harrow, Ontario. We'll have more on your forecast in a bit.
Tyson is closing down 2 more plants, this time in the northern part of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. ParkBusiness.com reporting on this. It says a warn notice posted with the state shows the closures will take effect on January 31st and will impact 229 workers. The plants include the original Philly cooked plant and original Philly raw plant, which were acquired by Tyson Foods back in 2017. Now, you'll remember earlier this week we told you Tyson would be permanently closing a plant in Emporia, Kansas that employs more than 800 people.
Sustainable Farming Week is brought to you by Neogen. Prioritizing herd health and embracing genomic testing are key steps toward maximizing your operation's success. Stay ahead of the curve, invest in your herd's health, and uncover their full potential.
Cattle producers are producing beef more sustainably than they were 50 years ago. That's due to continuous improvement over time. Now, sustainability helps build resiliency in the cattle herd, especially with the challenges of climate, including increased drought, which has cut the U.S. herd size to lows not seen since the 1960s. Groups like the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef are trying to bring all of the stakeholders in the food supply chain together to work on these challenges and even out the highs and lows in the cattle cycle.
It's not just one segment dictating to another segment. And so we're all coming together, we're all working together towards improving the sustainability of everybody. So when the packers are losing a bunch of money. How can we improve their sustainability? How can we improve the sustainability of the McDonald's and the Walmarts and those companies that are out there selling our food? They are going to go through those ups and downs too. So it's about the entire supply chain, not just one segment.
And that includes making sure the producers who are raising the food are profitable and can pass their operations on to the next generation. For all of our reports on sustainable farming, head over to agweb.com. Grains finding a reason for positivity on Thursday while cattle spent the day in the red. We'll talk about it all coming up next in Markets Now. And later, the subtle smells of cedarwood, leather, sea salt, and beer. A new barfume is ready just in time for Christmas. That story today in the country.
Sustainable Farming Week is sponsored by John Deere. Your land, your brand. Technology, equipment, and support to help you farm better now and generations from now.
A mixed day for traders with the bright spots showing up in the hard red winter wheat market. AgDay's Michelle Rook has more in Markets Now.
Joining us with markets is Brad Koima with Koima Varlick. And Brad, let's talk about the cattle markets, especially the feeder market has had a nice run recently because of the Mexican border being closed. What happens when the border reopens? What kind of reaction do you expect?
Which it's going to, okay? They've already got the protocol established. You know, ivermectin works, visual inspection. So I think it's days or weeks and not months and months. Let's not be surprised if it happens here in the next couple of weeks. The last I mentioned from APHIS was they thought that it would be in about 3 weeks, and that's a week or 10 days ago already. So it's out there now. It's a good question, and maybe I'm swimming against the current a little bit, but we had rallied a long ways ahead of that news. Now, some people are saying, well, did somebody know? Could be. Or was it because we finally had a bunch of moisture through Texas and Kansas, so we, were able to slow down that movement of cattle into feed yards, and we're able to, turn them out instead on wheat pasture, et cetera. But to give you some perspective, a week ago Monday is when we reacted to that story. January feeders that day closed at 255.47. Well, where I'm sitting here today looking at it, which I know this is taped, but right now we're just a little over $1 higher than that is all on January feeders. So it's not like we've got this huge premium built in because of it. My view would be that maybe we'll get a little wrinkle in the market, but I think this strength in this cash feeder cattle trade in the north is amazing. It seems like the attitude here is that possession is important and people want to have some cattle around them. And the overall supply cattle is a little tighter than what it has been as well. So I think the reaction is going to be less than what people would anticipate.
And because of the tight numbers and weights finally starting to drop, do you think that bodes well for 2025 or at least the first quarter?
I absolutely do. The one variable out there that I wished I had a little more backup data to back it up for is what did we do with the females? Did we hold some heifers or didn't we? I think we had to help some. But as we move into first quarter and the end of this quarter here, as the demand starts to firm up here for the holidays and move into the first quarter, I still think the supply of cattle in that quarter is less than it is now. Anybody that's listened to us regularly know I'm dumb enough to say I think we're going on top of 200 by a ways when we get to the first quarter.
All right. Thanks so much, Brad Koima with Koima Varlick. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
Taking a look at our jet stream, really going to be doing what I'm going to call a teeter-totter pattern between a trough and a ridge. I'll explain here in a second. We are seeing this big low pressure system off to our east coast that really, again, is bringing that polar and Arctic air to that part of the country. That being said, a very large ridge of high pressure really starting to dominate out west. We can see those really, really warm temperatures just shooting up, actually all the way up into Canada for the west coast. As I play this in motion, though, we can see that ridge is starting to move over, but also starting to break down just a little bit. You know, that weather maker we were just talking about that is still off the east coast or west coast, that is, it's just starting to move in. Yeah, really going to be disrupting this ridge of high pressure. This is on Sunday, and as we can see, starting to get some troughing up in the northern plain states, and then really going to be digging and deepening by midweek. Take a look at this next plunge of cold air for the United States there, especially again over the Midwest, going all the way down south to New Orleans, where actually, in fact, they could be seeing some below average temperatures. Now, to end off the week, we are seeing a bit of a resurgence and a bit of a recession of that cold polar air, and yet again, another ridge. Again, the teeter-totter ridge trough situation moving through. Now, I did also want to talk about our wind gust forecast, which is going to be, of course, very apparent. Looks like another large wind event is starting to set up, especially for the heartland of the Midwest for this weekend. Take a look at this swath of really, really strong winds. Again, we're talking 35 and 40 plus anywhere in those pink, really, really loud colors there. So something obviously to keep a very, very close eye on, again, as the jet stream really starts to buckle and ridge. Kingston Springs, Tennessee, 38 degrees, a low of 21 degrees. Clovis, New Mexico, a high of 50 degrees, low of 34 degrees, cloudy conditions. And finally, Urbana, Indiana, 29 degrees and a low of 21 degrees.
We're starting a new segment here on AgDay called Fresh Produce Fridays. We're excited to join with our partners over at the Packer to bring you weekly reports about all of those terrific fruits and vegetables that we eat, everything from how they're grown to where they originate. The Packer's Jennifer Straley takes us inside one fruit breeder's amazing new campus.
Ever wondered where your favorite seedless grape, sweet cherry, or flavorful blueberry was born? Some get their start with fruit breeder Bloom Fresh. In August, the company opened the doors to its new $14 million FruitWorks Discovery Center here in McFarland, California. The sprawling campus features specialized labs, 150 acres of test vineyards, 25,000 square feet of greenhouses, and more, all designed to elevate natural fruit breeding.
We're moving from a very old, very small lab space. And so our new space is allowing us to really expand, I guess I would say the types of activities that we can do in-house.
The new lab space is also helping elevate the development of new varieties with desirable characteristics.
There's a lot of different traits and characteristics we care about as we're trying to develop a new variety of a grape or a cherry. And then what we're trying to do is harness, the genetic tools that exist nowadays to essentially be faster at what we're doing.
Owen says breeding woody plants like grapes and cherries is a slower process than breeding a new corn or tomato variety.
Grapes and cherries are slow growing. They take a long time to go through a cycle. So any place along that process where we can, cut off some of the time really adds up.
The Discovery Center also allows Bloom Fresh to more efficiently develop fruit with particular flavors and textures. It also helps produce plants with disease resistance and climate resilience.
I think it's possible to always be improving the varieties that exist. There's generally always some flaws in what currently is out there, and there's improvements that can be made. As a company, I think we've just been very successful in terms of developing, things that are improved and that what people want.
Owen says Bloom Fresh is as focused on what today's consumer wants as it is on what the grower needs.
It's not always about making improvements for a grower, which is important as well, but trying to make improvements that consumers are excited about. That's what we want. We want excitement from the consumer.
Join us for Fresh Produce Fridays next week for more on the Packers tour of the FruitWorks Discovery Center.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. And we look forward to bringing you part 2 of that report next week. Coming up, a gift you may want to consider for the hard-to-buy-for person in your life. It's sure to leave your senses tingling. Next.
AgDay is brought to you by Pivot Bio. Protect yield potential with a new mode of action in nitrogen. See how Pivot Bio fits into your fertility plan at talknitrogen.com.
Are you looking to get a Christmas gift for that difficult to buy for person on your list? Well, we may have found the perfect gift that might bring back some memories. The folks over at Miller High Life coming up with this one, a new fragrance called Miller Life Dive Bar Fume. That's right, the scent is supposed to remind you of a dive bar. Their marketing manager described it as having aromas of cedarwood, leather, tobacco, and salt. Dive Bar Fume will be available in a limited amount of units. Boxes of them are selling on MillerHighLife.com for about $60. Now, last we checked, they were sold out, but more was supposed to drop at 11 a.m. Central Time today. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.